The main item that we're going to cover right now is going to be the fairing and all sub-elements to the fairing that we purchased. The fairing is the Memphis Shades Batwing, and it comes stock just by itself with only the fairing. It does not include the windshield or any mounting mechanisms. So we did have to purchase additional items in order to install it. Some other things that we did get as well are some chrome trim accessories and also a big zipper pouch to help for storage on the inside. Some of the tools you're going to need for this job are going to include, we used our Torin Big Red shop stool in addition to our Craftsman tools and wrenches. We use those wrenches to adjust our mirrors and some other bolts that were on the assembly system and the supporting brackets. And we also used our motorcycle lift. It's the Power Zone motorcycle lift. So that was a huge help. It's actually still supporting the bike right now as we're doing the video. So all those together, the rest of the tools actually come with the trigger lock mounting system that we purchased in order to mount the actual fairing to the bike. So it did include 3 different sets of Allen wrenches, and that covers most all of the adjustments that we need to make other than a few wrenches that we had. But most of the tools already come with the kit and with the components that you need to mount the bike. The next thing we're going to do is install all the pieces. For us, all of these pieces are going to be installed using the same holes, and we're going to do them all at the same time. So the first thing we have to figure out is which order we're going to be installing them in. So the chrome trim is actually going to sit on the very front, so that's going to be the first thing that we're going to put on there. So we're going to get our, now I do have a couple of different choices of bolts due to the different accessories that I did purchase. The original fairing does come with the black bolts, and the actual chrome piece does come with the chrome bolts. So we're going to choose the chrome bolts, that way they blend in with the actual chrome trim. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to slide all the bolts and the washers in place. Due to the trim being straight, we're going to install these one bolt at a time. So we have the trim on the front first. Then we're going to find our windshield and slide it through the one bolt that's already passed through. And we're also going to do the one bolt for the zipper pouch. So after you've slid the bolt through, then you're going to take one of the black nut caps. It looks like this. It does have a shaft that'll cover your bolt, so you're going to slide it right down over the actual bolt. And then after it gets to the end, it'll run into the threads of the actual nut on top. So you'll slide that down all the way over it, and then you'll just tighten it down over the bolt. So we have the one side done now, and we'll go over to the other. So here we have all the bolts in place. This includes all the pieces. So we have the chrome trim up front, as you can see, right behind that. We have the windshield, and then back behind that we have this big zipper pouch. All of these are online at the Motorcycle Superstore or other various entities, but we did buy these all from the same place. The biggest thing that we ran into problem-wise here is, again, the chrome piece when we first received it is completely straight. So as you're installing it, it's easiest to do it one bolt at a time. And so the first bolt, usually it went in fairly well for us. The middle bolt we didn't really have too many issues with, but that last bolt was a pretty big pain. So for the last third bolt, we actually used some wooden clamps, which just have some rubber clamping jaws. And for that, we just clamped all three of these pieces down. And then on the back for the black piece, for the actual nut that has the covering on it, we just slid that right down over the bolt through all the holes in there. And then we were able to tighten it down just a little bit prior to getting that Allen wrench in there and actually cranking it down. So with everything on it, this is exactly how it looks. And now that we have it installed, all the actual fairing pieces installed, we can install it to the bike. We already covered how we install all the parts to the Batwing fairing, and now we're going to show how to actually connect it to the bike. So we have the kit here. We're going to go ahead and get it open. Some of the contents that this kit includes is the quick detach kit, which we purchased. And in the kit it has also there's a small bag here that's going to have your bolts and washers on it. There are instructions here on the back specific to your type of bike, and there are also 3 Allen wrenches right here that sit in the front. So we've already cut them out, and now we're going to cut out the rest of the pieces. Next thing we're going to do are put on the mounting brackets on the actual fairing itself. The fairing should already come with some nuts and bolts already on it, so we're going to take those off first thing. And on each bolt you're also going to find 1 washer as well. Another thing we're going to do before we get started is we did lay down a blanket over top of our gas tank, which is going to help protect against any loose Allen wrenches or other tools that may bang up our paint job. So we're going to put on our trigger lock mechanisms, and your lock should be tilted towards the inside as you install them. So we're going to remove the washer and the acorn nut, put on the trigger lock mechanism, put the washer and the nut back on. The next step we're going to take is going to be to install this little setup right here. So it's just this little piece. I only have it hand tightened on the other side. So how we're going to do that is on the stock forks for the Boulevard, there's this little hole right here that's already empty. There was no bolt in it, it's just standard empty. And so we're going to take this little piece that comes in the package, we're going to face it just like this with the hole up facing forward so we can see the top of that hex bolt. And then we're going to run, the package comes with another bolt and washer standard in it, so we're going to put the bolt in there and the washer and run it up into that hole that's currently there. So as we're placing it up here, again we're just going to hand tighten it at this point. So again we're just going to hand tighten this, so we're going to rotate this forward. Now my bike already has some brackets that are installed here to keep the wires in place and make them look a little bit better, so we're going to have to deinstall those. Another problem with this kit, and it does say it before you actually buy it on there, that you will have to get a blinker, the front blinker relocation kit. So we're just going to hand tighten this in there. When it's up a little bit closer, then we'll rotate this forward. So this little bracket that was in the way, we just kind of bent it out a little bit. It was pretty easy to bend out of place, and we're hoping that we won't have to deinstall this. That way we can just keep the wires all in place. But again, this is just hand tightened right in place. So we have the hex bolt that is forward, the front of it, and then the bolt actually just goes right into that slot very easily. You don't need any tools for it except for that final tightening, but it was very easy to get in there. Okay, so the next part we're going to do is install the clutch side mounting bracket, and that's what this piece is here already. So we've just kind of put it on there kind of loose. So we did have to make some alterations for the bike. My bike is already a little bit more custom. We do have custom turn signals there, so that is not the standard. And due to that, our mounting brackets for the turn signals are a little bit different. So we were able to install this particular system using this alteration. It does say in the instructions that if you do have the stock ones, you will have to get a turn signal relocation kit. So the first thing we did was we actually loosened this bolt right here that's on the turn signal bar, and we had to pull that all the way out so we could slide our bracket in. Our bracket is going to look like this on the other side, so we had to pull that bolt out and then slide the bracket in so it could go into, so that the bolt could go into one of these holes right here. So we actually had to put it into the farther hole from the inside. So as we're sliding it in, we're going to come across this hole first. So we actually had to put it in the second hole so that it would line up with the L bracket that we had installed up above. So we do have the L bracket there that we had installed up above. As you can see there, we do have the face of the hex bolt that was on the L bracket. And so we loosened that after we installed the bolt. So we fed the bolt back through the hole down here on the turn signal bar,
and we didn't tighten it down all the way, just a little bit to keep it stay, or to help it stay in there. And then we came back up top, we loosened that hex bolt to give us a little bit more spacing, and then what you'll actually see is on the turn bracket, it's just a slot. So you slide it right in under that L bolt. What you should see there is a space in between the actual head of that L bolt bracket, which is going to allow for this slot, and that's going to allow for this slot to slide right in there. So you will have to loosen it just a little bit to create the space you need to slide it in, but those are the two steps that we had to take. So all we did was take out that bottom bolt on our turn signal bar, we slid it in, put the bolt back in place, then we came up here and we loosened the hex bolt and slid the top of right in place, then tightened it back up. Okay, so we're going to show real quick how we're going to put this bracket in. Unfortunately, the cable is kind of blocking this hole right here in which we're going to put that bolt back in, so we are going to use the original bolt that we took out of this slot in order to reinstall this mounting bracket. So to get this cable out of the way, so as we push it in, we're going to see that on this side, it's actually the first hole we come across is going to line up with the top bracket there. So I'll hand tighten that real quick just to keep it in place, and then we'll go up top. So the next thing we're going to focus on is going to be the top bolt. So we now have these supporting brackets installed on both sides. We did loosen and tighten that hex bolt right there, so that is slid right in place. And then we also have the bolt down here at the bottom also in place as well, and already tightened. So it did take some adjustment. We already have fitted our fairing on there to make sure it actually does fit just properly. There was quite a few adjustments that we had to make due to the custom bike. We did have to adjust the mirrors on there, and we had to adjust the angle in which these L brackets actually sat so that we could get this on there so the spacing would be correct in order to fit the Batwing fairing. Okay, so now we have all of these supporting brackets installed and adjusted as needed. As we're getting ready to put on the Batwing fairing, the biggest thing we need to pay attention to are these trigger locks. So there's two ways of adjusting it. If you pull this tab forward, then that unlocks it and it'll allow you to bring it back. In order to lock this down in position after we have it in place, you're going to have to bring it down over the bolt and lock it in place and make sure this is all the way back. If your lever is out at all, then that means that it can fly back. So we're going to make sure that both sides are in the open position, and we're going to go ahead and line it up. So the first bolt the first one you're going to slide it onto will be the bottom side. After we have the two bottom ones on either side, then as long as your adjustments are made correctly, you should just be able to push it right back. And this is where we ran into troubles. In order for my fairing to go all the way back, we had to move our mirrors. So after it's back in place, then we're just going to pull this trigger lock down. See, like that, it just had a little bit more tension on it, so I need to push my fairing forward just a little bit. And I'm going to bring my trigger lock down and make sure that it's completely flush right here. If it's forward at all, so if you can push it forward, see that tab come out, and that means that it can fly up. It's not flush right here, so it can still pop up. So you have to make sure that it's completely flush and locked in place in order to make sure that your fairing can't come flying off during the ride. So it is completely flush, and then we just do that same thing on the other side. Okay, so we now have the fairing installed. Everything is in place here. As you can see, we have that gloss finish and all the accessories are attached. The biggest problem that we ran into during the actual fairing installation was the individual components of the custom bike. So the mirrors were sitting a little bit too far forward. They're already sitting up against the fairing while it's resting in place. So we did have to adjust the mirrors and use some extra tools for that. We did have to adjust some of the brackets up top in order to make sure that they were the correct spacing, to make sure that the fairing actually did fit on there just fine. DIY with Chris. giving you the tools to do it yourself. DIY with Chris, giving you the tools to do it yourself.